Welcome everyone to the last seminar in the Winter in the Refuges seminar series. This is going to be the one on Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge. And today, of course, we have Stephen Warner, who is the education coordinator out of the Manteo Gateway Visitor Center and works specifically with Pea Island and Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge in the education outreach. He'll be talking about Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge today and what you can do there and all the cool, unique parts of it. I mean, we were just talking about ghost crabs and those guys are real neat. And without further ado, we can go ahead and get started. So, Stephen, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Tara. Again, my name is Steve Warner. I am the education program coordinator at Pea Island and Alligator River, and we're going to be talking about Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge. And if you've ever been out here, this opening picture here is going to look very familiar to you. This was taken from the Pea Island Visitor Center looking north. And yeah, you can see the sand dunes to the right and the sound would be to your left. So this is looking north. So let me give you a brief overview of why Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge was established. It was developed to protect, maintain, and enhance healthy and viable populations of indigenous migratory birds, wildlife, fish, plants, including federal and state threatened and endangered species. To restore, maintain, and enhance the health and biodiversity of barrier island upland and wetland habitats to ensure optimum ecological productivity, provide the public with safe, quality, wildlife-dependent recreational and educational opportunities that focus on barrier island wildlife and habitats of the refuge, continue to participate in local efforts to sustain economic health through nature-based tourism. We're here to protect the refuge resources by limiting the adverse impacts of human activities and development, and finally, to acquire and manage adequate funding, human resources, facilities, equipment, and infrastructure to accomplish all the refuge's goals. That was a mouthful. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Pea Island, and this is a picture of its namesake. Many people don't know why it's called Pea Island. It's because of a plant that's found there. It's called the Dune pea, beach pea, or trailing fuzzy bean. It is actually a bean. It's not a pea, but in its early stages, the pod actually looks a little bit like a pea, so they called it a pea. But it has beautiful purplish, blue, pink flowers, and you'll see it in the spring blooming like that, and late summer actually it blooms sometimes too. And this is used for forage for some of the mammals that are found on Pea Island. So where is Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge? It's actually part of the Outer Banks, and it's on the north end of Hatteras Island. It's just south of Oregon Inlet. When you go over the new bridge that's out there, it's not the Bonner Bridge anymore. It's the Bass Knight Bridge. It is much bigger and much wider than the other one. The Bonner Bridge, the original one, really just spanned a small portion of Oregon Inlet, and of course, it is a sand spit, a dune, and that channel was constantly moving. So they found that they couldn't keep it open where it was. It was constantly moving. So they built this new bridge to accommodate all the movement of the inlet. The refuge has 13 miles of seashore, and it ends right at the town of Rodanthe. As soon as you go down there, we call it the Rodanthe curves, the S curves down there, and that's right where the refuge ends. So to get there, you go to the Outer Banks and you take Highway 12 south out of Nags Head, go about 10 miles, cross that new Bass Knight Bridge, and as soon as you get over on the south side, you are on the refuge. It's fairly narrow. It's 13 miles long, but it's usually less than half a mile wide, but sometimes as much as a mile or two. It comprises 4,665 land acres, but when you include the water acreage that we have attached to the refuge, it's over 25,000 acres. Here is a map of the refuge, and you can see the Oregon Inlet is at the top. You can see that there's some ponds there, or what we call impoundments. There's 3 of them: the North Pond, the Newfield Pond, and the South Pond. We manage those impoundments by changing the water level at different times of the year to accommodate different species of birds. In the wintertime, we kind of fill them up a little bit so we get migratory waterfowl. And you'll see it appears to be very successful because we get a lot of birds there. So that's Pea Island and where it's located. Okay, so for such a small area of land, it has a surprising number of distinct habitats. There's 9 different habitats associated or found on Pea Island Refuge. I'll read them off to you: brackish marsh, the beach sand dunes, the maritime scrub, which is actually just all the low bushes and small trees that grow out there. The overwash flats, this is when the wave action, larger waves and storms will push water and create flats that's not actually part of the dunes, and it's not actually part of the actual beach. So they create these open flats area, and it's a very important habitat. More habitats, we have salt flats. We have, of course, the ocean beach, which is where the wave action is and where most people go. There's salt marshes, and then there's maritime grasslands. That's 8 of them. The last one is our managed wetlands. And you can see from the photograph that's up here that this is our impoundments. The managed wetlands are the impoundments that we have. And you can just see from this photo the different birds that use it. Quite a diversity of birds. There's probably 6 or 7 different waterfowl just in this one picture right here. Okay, so wintertime on Pea Island. What goes on in the wintertime? Well, it's all about the migratory birds. The whole habitat, the impoundments, and most of the shore and the sound side is all about migratory birds. We create a habitat that they really like, so they do come here quite a bit. And I am only going to touch on just a very few species that are found here. The picture you see is the American avocet, and it's a neat little bird. It uses its bill there. You can see it's kind of scooped up, and the lower part is longer than the upper part, and they just dig through the marshes and the sand, and they look for little crustaceans that are in the sand there. Another bird we have is the oyster catcher, and these start arriving right about now, this time of year, late February and early March. They start arriving, and they'll go ahead and nest sometimes here. Sometimes they'll just stop over and just be here for a short time. Some of them will stay most of the summer. Yeah, and they're a neat bird to watch. They're very colorful. You can see the bright orange beak there, and you'll see them again in the shallows looking for oysters and clams and things like that. In recent years, we're getting more sightings of this bird. It's a snowy owl. It has been in the past a very rare sight, but it's becoming more frequent. We don't know why, because usually they were only found here when there was low food sources in their northern range, and they would come down here to forage for food. But there really hasn't been a shortage of food in the northern territories, but they are still coming down here with a little bit more frequency. It's not like you'll see them all over the place, and it is still a pretty rare sight. And you really can't get very close to them. You can see from this photo it was taken from quite a distance away. But it is a rare sight, but a very welcome sight when you get to see one. And of course, we have the waterfowl. Again, here's our picture of one of the impoundments, and just a ton of different birds come down here. One of my favorites is the white pelican. It is a really large bird. The first time I saw them, there was two of them swimming together, and they were pretty far out in the impoundment, and I actually thought it was a boat. It was so large. I was like, who's out in our impoundment in a boat? And it was just two of these white pelicans. They are really, really big. Okay, so what else happens in wintertime? If you were here last week, you heard me discuss a little bit at length about Wings Over Water Festival. It's a magnificent festival. We're hoping to get permission to have some of the events this year. It's tentatively scheduled for October 19th through the 24th. We have events all the way from Pea Island, which is right up on the border with Virginia, all the way down to Ocracoke Island. If you're familiar with the Outer Banks, that's quite a span of distance. We have classes from Birding 101. We have wildlife art, photography classes, paddling. I think we counted 12 different paddling classes that we had last year scheduled. The Owl Prowl, that's on Alligator River, which is what we discussed last week, but there's birding opportunities all over the place. It's really a neat thing to do. We will have keynote speakers and dinner if allowed to by then, but who knows what's going to happen with COVID-19. But if you want more information on Wings Over Water, go to www.wingsoverwater.org and it will tell you everything you need to know. Now, there's also an Encore, which is later in the year. It's in December, and this year it's scheduled for December 10th through the 12th. It's much, much colder then, so you may need to bundle up. It is just birding opportunities only, no paddling, nothing else. It's an opportunity to see more of the wintering birds, because in October, not all of them have actually shown up yet. So because it's so cold, we like to do the festival earlier in the year, and then just we've decided to have this Encore one so that people that were really wanted to see the wintering birds would have the opportunity. So Wings Over Water Encore, December 10th through the 12th, and again, go to wingsoverwater.org and you can find all the information there. So what else do we have on Pea Island in the wintertime? Seals. I really hadn't thought about this until we were out there and somebody said they saw a seal. And yes, there are seals that come up on the beaches in late February and March. So this is seal time right now. They're actually migrating from south to north. They're going up to, there's increased populations in Massachusetts area. And they kind of go down south in the wintertime and head north. So as they're migrating, they do come up on our beaches, and occasionally you can see one basking in the sun, just laying in the sun, catching some, warming up or resting, catching some sun, and they'll go ahead and feed a little bit in the surf and catch some fish before moving on at the end of March and going up to Massachusetts. Okay, so spring and summertime. What else is there? We have nesting sea turtles, and we have a lot of shorebirds. Nesting sea turtles, we have 5 different species that use Pea Island and the Outer Banks. We typically have about 10 nests a year, sometimes more, sometimes less, but that's about an average. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth about the sea turtles here in just a moment. Okay, so what else is here? Black skimmers are here in the summertime. They actually start arriving in late April, and then sometimes they will nest here, sometimes they go other places. We've done some banding on them, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes they'll go to Bermuda, sometimes they'll go north, sometimes they'll go back south. Some of them even stay here. So there's really no rhyme or reason to where they go, but they are here. They start arriving in April, as does the American least tern, and they do a lot of nesting here, and we protect the areas where they do nest. You can see from the photo here, they like shelly areas that's a little bit bigger, more coarse than the actual sand of the beach. So you'll find them either on the side of the dune or actually over the dune and in amongst the dunes nesting. And we do try and protect those whenever we find a tern. Okay, we do have some endangered species that use Pea Island. One of them is the piping plover. We don't get a lot of those, but when we do see one, it's very exciting, and we do try and find out where their nesting sites is if they're nesting here. And again, we will try and protect that nesting site and keep them safe because they are an endangered species. To protect them as much as we can. Another endangered species is the sea turtles, and specifically the loggerhead sea turtle, which does occasionally nest right here on Pea Island. And I'm going to go into a little bit more in depth about what happens and what we do to protect the sea turtles. So first thing we do is at the beginning of summer, we have a lot of interns and volunteers, and one of their duties they get assigned to do is to patrol the beaches and look for the crawls of the nesting turtles. They'll go out first thing in the morning, right at the break of day, so they can see where they're going, and they will try to find evidence of the turtles crawling up onto the beach. And you can see here, this one is pretty evident. It's easy to see, but some of them are much more difficult. But when a turtle crawls up onto the beach, and they usually do it at night, and we try and find those nesting sites. Now, when we do find one, when we do find evidence of it, we'll call our biologists, and they will come out to the site. They'll determine if, in fact, there was a nesting there. They will mark it off in a as inconspicuous way as possible so as not to attract too much attention to it, but also make people know, aware that there is a nest there if they do get too close and they're supposed to keep away. So we'll do that through most of the summer. And then later in the summer, we have what's called turtle watch, and the eggs take about 80 days, depending on the species, maybe a little more, a little less, but it's about 80 days. So once we do find a nest, when it gets to be about 70 days or so, we'll start assigning people a turtle watch, and they will sit nearby the turtle nest, and just to make sure it's safe. And when they start to see some activity, hopefully we'll have something like this set up that you see here in the picture. You can see that there's a small fence around it, and then we have kind of a runway for the hatchlings to come out and send them on down the beach. With all of our light pollution these days and things like that, sometimes the turtles cannot find their way to the beach. So what we do is we set up these runways here with this green plastic that you see there and direct them towards the ocean. So what happens is it's called a turtle boil, and all of the eggs that are in there, and it can be as many as 80 to 100 eggs depending on the species, they all start to hatch at about the same time, and they all start trying to climb out of the nest because it's been buried all this time, and it looks like the sand is actually boiling. So they call it a turtle boil, and hopefully we've got our runway or whatever it is we're doing to ensure that these turtles get into the ocean in place. And it's quite a sight to see the sand coming up and all these little hatchlings coming up and trying to get back into the ocean. And hopefully they will all get into the sea. Of course, we do let nature take its course out here. We are a wildlife refuge, and we're here for all wildlife. So we don't do any protection of them from other birds, predators, or things like that. We do let them go into the ocean, and of course, once they're in the ocean, they are completely on their own. Okay, so what are some challenges to Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge? Well, the biggest challenge we face is sea level rise. The ocean is rising, and storms now. It doesn't even take a big storm sometimes to create what you see on the left here, overwash and things like this. You can see here the road. This was after a hurricane, so the road was washed out. It completely washed out sections of the road. The middle photo that you see there is actually the southern part of Pea Island, and you can see the buildings there. That's Rodanthe, and the area just to the north of that, the last hurricane we had, all almost created a new cut right there. It actually was there, and they filled it in very quickly. So that's a very vulnerable area. You can see how narrow it is. It's only a couple hundred yards wide right there, and it is extremely low. And if you look at the right-hand picture, you can see what we do to try and protect Route 12. Route 12 is what all those sand dunes that you see there, what they're trying to protect. Because the road is the only thoroughfare on the Outer Banks. What Shalib Nag said, that's the only road on Hatteras Island that goes north and south. So they try and protect it as much as they can. So they're building up these sand dunes, but of course they are just sand. So a good storm will wash them away. If you look at the center picture again, look to the left. Now this is a depiction of the new bridge that's going in place. It's going to go way out into the sound and then come in just a little bit south of some of the buildings there and houses of Rodanthe. What this is going to do is going to save Route 12 from what you see on the right. They're going to let nature take its course right there, and if it creates a new cut, they're going to let it create a new cut, because the bridge, all the traffic, and Route 12 is going to go on that new bridge that you see in the center photograph going into the sound to the left, and it's elevated, and it will withstand a good many years of movement and water and storms without having to protect Route 12 like you see in the pictures to the right. So that's our major challenge that we have out here at Pea Island, is protecting Route 12 and loss of habitat. When we first established Pea Island, there was well over 5,000 acres of land, and if you recall at the beginning, I said there's about 4,600 acres now. So we've lost nearly 1,000 acres of property just by natural loss from erosion and from sea level rise. It's coming back into mostly from the sound side. Okay, so what is there to do at Pea Island? Well, of course, you can hit the beach and just go and lay in the beach and enjoy. It's very wild. We don't do anything. There's no replenishment. There's nothing that you see like you do up at Nag's Head and Kill Devil Hills or Kitty Hawk. There's no houses. It is a totally natural habitat as nature is making it, and it's really pretty cool. Especially if you find one of the more isolated places to go ahead and go to the beach, or you walk a few hundred yards just away from one of the more busy places, you really do get a feel for how the Outer Banks were when it was completely wild, and it's really neat to see. So what do we do out there as far as the Fish and Wildlife Service? Well, you can see on the top left-hand corner, that's our visitor center and gift shop. It's a very popular place. There's a nice parking lot there. And this photo that you see is when we were raising it. We had to raise it. We raised it 5 feet because the last storms that came through, this was about 4 years ago, really, they came right through the parking lot, filled up that whole section with water, tore the sand dunes that are there, completely overwashed them. So to keep the visitor center from flooding anymore, we had to raise it. So I wanted to put this one in here to show that the visitor center is raised now, and there's steps and ramps there. It's completely accessible, and anyone can get in there. It is a great place to look at birds because we've got some of those powerful mounted binoculars that you can look and see the birds from inside if you want. And you can just go ahead and walk out to the impoundments. There's an accessible trail that you see on the right there, and that goes out on some of the berms that separate the impoundments, and you can walk to what you see there on the bottom right-hand corner, some of our bird watching platforms, and they're raised platforms, and again you can see they've got some binoculars there, and you can look out into the impoundments and see the birds. We do have some educational and interpretive programs. You can see one of them here. This is some kids. We actually have a canoe trip, and we let people paddle around on the sound side, and you can get out and walk around. We stay in very, very shallow areas, and kids can get out with a little net like you see this kid has in his hand there and scoop up all the little critters, so you can see what is actually growing in the sound. And everybody is familiar with the crabs and the good fishing and everything, but they always forget that it's the little stuff that supports all of those big fishes and things that you hear about. So we try and take people out, families, and let them find all the little tiny stuff that's in there. And we'll find little crabs, small shrimp, all kinds of things. It's surprising what we'll find sometimes. Okay, so that's Pea Island in a very short presentation. Does anyone have any questions for me about Pea Island?
If people would like to raise their hands through the Teams, or just put your questions in the chat, I can read them off. First question, Stephen, is actually from Tara, and she asked, what species of seals are seen on the shores of Pea Island? She wasn't sure if she missed that or not, if you know the specific species of seal.
It is mostly harbor seals and gray seals. Those are the two species that we've seen.
Cool. And Bill Willis asked, how many distinct wildlife habitats are present within the refuge, and which ones have been severely impacted?
Well, there's 9 different habitats, and I went through them there, and we're actually losing a lot of the just the grasslands, the things that are not currently affected by the salt water, the higher ground, because as sea level rises, it's impacting and starting to encroach on those areas, the maritime scrub, where it's higher land and actual trees and scrub bushes and things like that are growing. They can't tolerate the salt when actual salt water gets there or brackish water gets there. They can't tolerate that. So that's the habitat that we're losing, and it is most endangered by the sea level rise, because of the saltwater intrusion is actually killing a lot of those habitats, those plants.
Okay. And then there's a question from LE. They raised their hand. I'm not sure what the name is, but they can, if you need, sorry, you can take yourself off of if you would like, LE.
Okay. I don't know why my name's not showing. It's showing on all other teams' meetings, but I'm Alvin Braswell. I was just curious if you do any monitoring of diamondback terrapins in the sound.
None that I know of. We do have a lot of turtles that are in the sound. We've got several species there. I don't know much about the diamondback terrapins, unfortunately, so I can't speak to them specifically, and I can find that out for you. But I have not heard of any specific monitoring or
yeah, I don't believe the Wildlife Commission monitors in that area. So I was just curious if you did. How about the red ear that is in the little pond there near the visitor center that somebody's released there?
How about the what was that?
The red ear slider. Is you got an invasive species that's in the little pond near the visitor center. It's been there for a few years now.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of them. We had the yellow sliders and more snapping turtles than I ever thought I would want to see in that little pond there. And so I haven't heard of them getting a foothold, but that doesn't mean that they haven't. It just means that I haven't been aware of that.
I think it's
again,
just
I can
the
check.
one. Just the one, what I've seen.
Just the one. Yeah, I'm actually going out there on Friday, so I will go ahead and take a look and see if anybody knows anything about those or that one.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, and Debbie asked, can you tell us more about the white pelicans? She says that she lives in Carolina Beach and has never seen one before.
I had never seen one before either. They look just, I mean, they're pelicans. They've got the big, they scoop up a lot of water. They're bigger than the more common black pelicans that you see. They've got a significantly larger wingspan, and they are bright white. They are just like the tundra swans. Very bright white plumage, and yeah, they're great to see. They kind of hang out in groups, and I had some photos and some video of them, and I was watching them, and they're kind of cool. They just scoop up water just like pelicans, and they're really neat. So we do have, I mean, not a lot of them. The last time I was out there, I saw probably 30 of them in 3 different groups.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few of them out there. It's not individuals. I mean, there's groups of them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Gail asked, how do you raise the water level in the ponds?
We have huge pumps. We've got one main pump area, and that fills up the center or the middle pond or the impoundment. And then we have smaller sets of pumps that pump it from the center pond into the north and the south ponds. So these are really, really large pumps, and they do a really good job. They pump a lot of water in and out. And it's funny to watch when we're draining them. I watched it last year when they were draining it, and because of all the crustaceans and things that are in the ponds, the outlet into the sound, it just attracts thousands of fish, and they're filtering through all the water that's coming out of the impoundments into the sound. And when we're draining it, you can just see thousands and thousands of fish, different schools, different types of fish, and it's kind of a neat thing to see.
Okay, and then Clark is asking, what is the life expectancy of Pea Island and wildlife as the barrier island continues to be diminished due to hurricanes and northeastern storms impact?
Yeah, who knows? Left in its natural state, it would actually just keep slowly making its march kind of to the southwest, and eventually in, several thousand years would eventually just meet with the mainland, but that would take thousands and thousands of years. Right now, Pea Island itself, and for the most of the southern Outer Banks, we're protecting Route 12, so we are continually building up those sand dunes to protect the road, which is there, and that's kind of, it's helping to keep it where it is, but remember, it's a sand dune and it wants to move. So it is a problem, and it's something that we started years and years ago. Once we put the road in, after World War II in the 50s, we put the paved road in, and then we started protecting it, and now we're kind of stuck with protecting it because people want to come out here, and it's the only access really to the Outer Banks and Hatteras and Ocracoke and all of that down there. So how long will it last? As you can see, we've already had to raise our visitor center. The last storm, we lost our actual headquarters that was out at Pea Island further to the south. It was destroyed. That's why we have our new Gateway Visitor Center, which is on Manio Island. We had to build a new headquarters essentially, so we built it on Manio Island, which is a couple miles inland from the beach. So it's happening right now. As far as putting a timeline on it, it's just hard to say, but it is, sea level rise is impacting Pea Island every day.
Okay. And then Debbie asked, with more sightings of snowy white owls, any observations on changes in their food source? Typically they eat rodents. So do you think that their food choice is changing as they're becoming more frequent down in, farther south.
Ooh, that I don't know. I'll have to ask a biologist about that. But there is plenty of rodents out on Pea Island, so there's no shortage of things for them to eat, and there's not that many of them. Like I said, it's a big deal when we do see one. We see one or two maybe in a winter. Sometimes we go 2 or 3 winters without seeing any at all. So they are becoming a little bit more frequent than they had in the past, but it's not like we're getting flocks of snowy owls. It's still a very, very low number of snowy owls that we see.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Gail asked, are the white pelicans migratory? And if they are, do you know where their home is?
They are migratory because they're not here all year round. They do show up in November is when they start showing up, and that's when I saw them, the two of them together. Honestly, I don't know where they come from. I'm going to have to check and see. I'm assuming it's from somewhere up north because they come here in the wintertime, but I don't know exactly. Sorry about that.
It doesn't look like I have any more questions in the chat. No one's holding their hand. Oh. And Tara asked, what are the most common plant species on Pea Island?
Well, each one of those habitats that we discussed has different species in them, and it depends really on the salinity and of the water that they get. So there's hundreds of different species of plants that are out there, and each one of those habitats has different species with them. Of course, there's too many to mention, but there is 9 distinct habitats. If you go on our website, there is a description of each one of the habitats, and they do give a brief explanation of the types of grasses and plants that are out there in each one of those habitats.
And it looks like Wilson has another question. Wilson, you can go ahead and take yourself off mute.
Thank you, Katerina. Yeah, Stephen, I'm going to put you on the spot, and the expert that knows the answer to this question is next to you in the video there. But do people have to worry about venomous snakes on Pea Island?
There are some. There is the timber rattler can be found here. There's not a lot of them because it's kind of away from the mainland. There are some cottonmouths out here also, so there are some venomous snakes, but they don't want to get near you any more than you want to get near them. So as long as you're cautious, we haven't had any. I have not heard of anybody having any problems with them out here on the island. And it's always on the sound side. It's never on the beach side. They're always found on the sound side.
Good answer. I will ask one more question. I know you said there wasn't any beach nourishment on Pea Island, and that is certainly true in the sense that South Nags Head and other communities engage in that practice. But there is sand bypassing on the north end that is done by the NC Department of Transportation, and I guess maybe the Corps of Engineers as well, as part of the special use permit that allowed the jetty to be constructed at Oregon Inlet. And it's done in a very careful fashion. I know Dennis Stewart, who was the former biologist at Pea Island, along with Dr. Bob Dolan, who was at the University of Virginia, designed a special way to put that sand on the beach when they do the bypassing. So hopefully it has less impact on the mole crabs and the coquinas, the little clams that live in the surf zone there, and hopefully has less impact on fish populations and shorebirds as well. So there is some. And then if you've been reading the news, there's been a recent effort to revitalize the Oregon Inlet Jetties project, which was some of us thought had been killed off a good while back. And now there's a proposal in the North Carolina legislature to resurrect that project and try and build jetties at Oregon Inlet.
Yes, Wilson, you are correct that there is some beach modifications that happen up there, and it is solely to build the bridge, the new bridge that's going in there. But we have also worked with VDOT to create some, they're not really impoundments, but for some of the shorebirds, we have had them dredge out large areas, actually 5 strips, and they dredge out, it's about 4 or 5 feet deep, lower than the actual beach area that's around them, and that fills up with water, and that creates some habitat for the shorebirds in particular. And that area was lost because of the construction. So there is some beach modification going on, and sometimes it's nourishment, like you said, building up some areas, and they actually were required to go ahead and dig out some areas, and they just did it again this past year. So those areas are going to be filling with water, or probably are already filled with water. If you're familiar with the area, they're kind of in that flat land behind the old Coast Guard building that's there, and going out towards the beach, and there's that open flats area. And yeah, so there is some beach modification that happens, but it's like you said, for the construction of the Oregon Inlet channels and the bridge that's going up. Yes.
Since you mentioned the old Coast Guard station, who owns that now, and what are the plans for that original historic Coast Guard station there?
I have heard, now this is just rumor that I have heard, that once they finish with construction of the bridge and they get all of their equipment and everything out of there, they're going to make a way into the parking lot again, and hopefully somebody will restore it. I don't know exactly who would be responsible for the restoration, but it's the building is still standing. It's not in the greatest shape. It looks like it's starting to show its wear and tear, but I have heard that once they finish the bridge, and of course, if you've been recently, there's just so much construction that's right in the area where the parking lot is or where the area of the Coast Guard station is, that yeah, people, there's only a small area for people to get in there right now. It's very limited access. So I've heard once all that construction is done, that somebody's going to go in there and they're going to do some work, and they're going to create a road that you can get back to the Coast Guard station, and somebody's going to hopefully restore that.
And one more, I keep thinking of more questions. I had thought that when they removed the Bonner Bridge, that they were going to leave the fishing access catwalks on the south side of Oregon Inlet there. But then when I drove over the Bass Knight Bridge this past fall, it appeared that they had removed everything. So what's the status of any public fishing access there at Oregon Inlet? Will there be any more other than, surf fishing on the beach?
I was also under the impression that they were going to leave some, and when I was there it was in early December, it was between Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday, that there was still a lot of the bridge left intact and in place there. So that was also my understanding, was that they were going to leave some of that bridge in place. And the only way you can really see it is if you drive down to where the construction area is going towards the Coast Guard station, and you can see what is left of the old Bonner Bridge there.
Okay, I may have just missed it then.
Yeah, it's hard to see if you're actually on the new bridge, the Bass Knight Bridge, because it's kind of almost underneath it, so it is hard to see there. But yeah, there should be some left. As far as I know, they are leaving some of it still there. That's pretty low to the water. It's not the elevated part that's there going to be used for fishing.
Okay, and then we have a question from Mark, and they're asking, are there any common or unique fungal species native to Pea Island? And the same question for amphibians. Are there any common or unique species of amphibians?
I don't know of any fungal species that are out there. I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with fungus at all, so I can't really speak to that. As far as amphibians, it is brackish water, so there's not a lot of amphibians that are in the brackish water. That's not to say that there's none. It's just I'm not aware of any amphibians that are there.
I think Alvin Braswell could answer that question.
He's correct. There's not much in the way of amphibians out there. Where you do get a little bit of freshwater puddles, you would expect the southern leopard frog to be in the lesser saline edges of the marsh, and Fowler's toad occurs in some areas there around Rodanthe. And I would also expect maybe squirrel tree frog and green tree frog. They hitchhike a lot, and they're very common further down on the banks. And so anywhere they find a little fresh puddles around Rodanthe area and stuff, they're likely to have taken hold.
Well, I can definitely vouch for the tree frogs, because I was opening up a small area that's enclosed where we have one of our counters that counts, vehicles and the people that are in the Pea Island Visitor Center parking lot area by the little pond that's there. And I opened it up, and there must have been 25 little tiny frogs, and they all jumped out. They were climbing up my arm. Yeah, it was something.
I've had squirrel tree frogs ride all the way back from Buxton to Raleigh.
Yeah. So it was kind of scary, but I wasn't expecting it. But yeah, so there is a lot of tree frogs there. Thank you.
Okay, and it doesn't look like we have any more questions. Stephen, if they have any additional questions, would they be able to contact you, or if they contacted me and I forwarded it to you, it'd be okay?
Absolutely. Go ahead and do that. I like looking stuff up because it's a learning opportunity for me too. So please, if you have questions, you can send it to me or send it to Tara and she'll forward it. I would welcome that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge and the Winter in the Refuges seminars. And if you've attended every single seminar, even more thanks. It's been a fantastic time, and I've really enjoyed seeing everyone learn more about the refuges and see all that they can hold. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope everyone has a great night. And thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen, for the presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Tara.